How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. We are so very close to one of the most unnecessary remakes of all time releasing in theaters this weekend. And now we're here talking about the conclusion of the trilogy, guys. This came out in 2019. I remember watching this in theaters. I remember thinking, yeah, I mean, it's kind of the Return of the Jedi of this trilogy. But you know what? I actually think it's better than I remembered it. So all seems well on the island of Berk after the events of 2, as Vikings and dragons now live together in peace and harmony under the leadership of Hiccup. And Hiccup's beloved dragon Toothless meets an enchanting creature who captures his eye. All the while, the evil Grimmel, voiced by the legendary F. Murray Abraham, launches a devious plan to wipe out all the dragons. So Hiccup must unite both clans to find the hidden world, which holds the key to saving Toothless and his flying friends. Because even though they love living with dragons and they have grown to love their companions, the Berk that they live in is not sustainable. So Too Long didn't read of the plot. The Vikings are kind of sad that the dragons are going off on their own to mate, I guess. But then they slowly recognize that, yeah, this is probably the safest place for them. Because they stay out here with Vikings and people like Grimmel are going to come around and try to decimate them. And it's a pretty simple story in theory. Now, I can honestly sit here and say that some people might look at the hidden world and think that it's kind of unnecessary, because the whole arc of the trilogy could have just been Hiccup's ascension to being the chief of the Viking clan. But I'm going to disagree with that notion and say that the whole idea of this trilogy was the relationship between Hiccup and Toothless. That is what is driving this trilogy forward, is the adorable, endearing, and funny, sweet, cute relationship between Hiccup and his pet. And yes, Toothless does get a lot of moments to shine in all of his adorable glory, especially when he's trying to woo this white fury that he comes across. And you know what I think the most incredible thing about this movie is? It's not even necessarily the animation, which once again, it's Dreamworks, it's gorgeous. I once again saw How to Train Your Dragon 3 in 3D, and it was such an entrancing experience in the theater. It isn't even necessarily the voice acting, it's not necessarily the story. DeBlois once again does a great job directing this. I think a lot of what makes The Hidden World so great is what made a movie like WALL-E so great. Do you remember the first half of WALL-E and how emotionally investing that was? And how Pixar was able to manage that with minimal dialogue? Toothless and this White Fury are basically the equivalent to WALL-E and Eve. Because a lot of those scenes where they're bonding together, it's just a lot of musical underscoring from John Powell, and there's no dialogue. Which goes without saying because they're dragons. And they get across so much with these characters. And Toothless, I think, has probably his best arc in the entire trilogy here. Because let's face it, I love Jay Baruchel as Hiccup. I think Hiccup is a great dweeb. But I feel like his arc is kind of complete here. There's not really a whole lot left for him to go, except for the eventual release of Toothless back into the wild. Which is eventually what happens after the defeat of Grimmel, who I honestly think is F. Murray Abraham is fantastic. If you don't know who F. Murray Abraham is, just go watch Amadeus. Do yourself a favor and just watch that biopic. It's one of the greatest biopics of all time. But you know what I mean? It feels like The Hidden World is more of a Toothless story than a Hiccup story. And it's not to say that the Viking characters are bad here. I think Astrid gets a lot more to do in this than she does in the predecessor. Valka almost feels like an afterthought. Cate Blanchett is really good in the movie. Not a whole lot for her to do. Kit Harington as Eret provides some comic relief along the way. Gerard Butler does come back as stoic in some really fun flashback sequences, which are sure to bring a tear to many an eye who loves the father-son dynamic in the original How to Train Your Dragon. But no, the story of The Hidden World is how do you get Toothless to safety? And how do you make sure that all of his scaly companions are not wiped out? And I think that part of the story is super juicy. In the finale, I honestly forgot how emotionally satisfying it was once the dragons migrate over to the hidden world. And then in the epilogue, when you see Hiccup and Astrid have their 2 kids, and they visit Toothless, and he has adorable dragon children of his own. And it's like, does Toothless remember him? Oh, of course he does, even though he has a badass looking beard. Yeah, of course he remembers his pal. And yeah, I mean, this is just a really satisfying trilogy here. Not one miss, Dreamworks. This, I feel like, has the same consistency as the original Star Wars trilogy, where you have 2 instant classic first 2 movies. And then you have The Return of the Jedi. It's fun enough. It's got a satisfying emotional conclusion. But you know what I mean? It didn't really feel like after How to Train Your Dragon 2, the story had a lot of creative juice flowing. Like, I didn't really know where DreamWorks could take this story. But man, they prove you wrong here. And The Hidden World, even though it is the weakest of the three, it is still an excellent family feature. How to Train Your Dragon might be the most consistent family trilogy of any movies, because there's enough in here for kids and adults to enjoy. The Hidden World does have a lot of very cutesy moments with the romantic elements with Toothless, and it still retains the Viking aura and the aesthetic that we all grew to know and love from the previous two. But all that in mind, I'm going to give The Hidden World an A-. Yeah, like I said, even though it's the weakest of the three, this is better than I remembered seeing it in the theater. But let me know what you think. Do you guys think that The Hidden World is the best of the trilogy? Do you disagree with me? Let me know all down there. And hit that subscribe button if you're new, and tap on that thumbs up as well if you haven't already. And stay tuned for the review of the remake. I cannot wait to rip into that one. I mean, I'm going to give it a shot, even though I think it's a shot for shot, based on what I'm hearing. It does not need to exist, and I will die on that hill. But guys, thank you so much again for your continued support. Y'all are the best. And with all that being said, Back Talk, commence.